Okay, so next up we have Ramon Lobato, who is Associate Professor of Media and Communication and an ARC Future Fellow at RMIT University, a media industries researcher. He has a special interest in video distribution and has written widely on piracy and informal media. I will let you read more about Ramon's bio on the website because he's gunning to get up here. Please make him welcome.
Thanks, Mel. And a huge thank you to Mel and to Leanne for this fabulous event. I've enjoyed it so much. I've learned so much. It's been the most stimulating conference I've been to in ages, so thank you. Really exciting. The research I'm going to be presenting today is being done with my co-author, Alexis Carlata, who's a research fellow at RMIT, and we've been working together on projects around TV industries and TV audiences for some time. So what I'll be sharing today is one little piece of a larger project that, seeing the CFP for this event really drove us to kind of pull together because we had been thinking about this for quite some time, really wanted to share it. So again, thank you for the opportunity. So today I'm going to be talking about one of the oldest and most familiar devices in consumer electronics, the TV set. And specifically, I want to explore what recent changes in TV software mean for the lifespan of TV devices and the implications for device replacement, repair, and disposal that flow from this. Okay, so this, I'll leave it there. So it will come as no surprise that the TV is the third most energy-hungry appliance in Australian homes after the clothes dryer and the fridge, and that TVs contribute about 5% of total household energy use. Australians use their TVs for an average of almost 2 hours a day, and increasingly for streaming rather than broadcast, as we all know. And streaming has a significantly higher carbon footprint than broadcast, so the shift towards smart TVs and streaming comes at an environmental cost. And as we all know, the TV itself is full of rare earth minerals whose extraction also has significant environmental externalities. And we know that only about 17% of e-waste is recycled globally. So I guess the point I'm getting to here is that small changes in TV use, purchase and disposal behaviour can often be quite significant. And that in particular, increasing the effective lifespan of TV devices through reuse and repair seems an obvious step that could do quite a lot of good. And so again, this, coming back to Nathan's comments before about if people were able to use their mobile phones for one extra year, that would take 600,000 cars off the road, or this is what we've been thinking about in terms of TVs. And what we've found from doing this research is that TVs are often disposed of when they're perfectly functional, when they still work perfectly well as a display monitor, but the software is often the problem. So that's our focus for today, how obsolescence is built into smart TV apps and operating systems. And so this comes out of a larger project that I mentioned before that Alexa and I have been doing at RMIT, which has been looking at business practices in TV hardware and software. And as part of this, we've been looking at how Australians buy, use and dispose of their TVs. So a lot of this is about the kind of the platformization of the TV, so the transformation from the TV into a dumb device into a smart device. What that has meant in terms of competition issues for kind of who has access to TV home screens and marketplaces and app stores and so forth, for cultural policy around local content and other kinds of important areas, and for audiences, how are people using their TVs. And as I'll speak to in a moment, we find a very diverse array of uses which have different kinds of impacts for all those policy issues. But kind of software is at the middle of this, at the centre of it. So I'll just talk you through some of the things that we've been doing. So we have a little lab set up at RMIT which is full of kind of current model smart TVs. So we look closely at the interfaces and the search engines and the recommendations and try to make sense of the kind of business practices that sit behind those and what that means for different kinds of content. We did an online panel survey at the end of last year, which was very, very interesting. So there's about 1,000 odd smart TV users, we kind of drilled them with questions about how they use their TVs, how they use their remote controls, search behaviour, discoverability issues, which taught us a lot about how those kinds of, how the design issues around TV platforms kind of connect to everyday use. Alexa did a bunch of interviews with retailers, which was fascinating. So we were looking there at the conversations that retailers have with customers when they're buying TVs and the kinds of purchase motivations and things that don't come up in those conversations too. And around all that, doing a lot of reading and thinking about the kind of the history of consumer electronics, specifically TV manufacturing, the kind of geography and industrial history of TV manufacturing, and the kind of geopolitics behind all that. So it's been really interesting to think about the TV as one of other devices, but that kind of indexes a bit of a series of geopolitical shifts from US and Europe in the post-war period through Japan and then Korea, and then to China being the current home of most of the largest TV manufacturer brands, China and Korea now. So where does this fit in terms of scholarship? So I'm a cultural media studies person, and our fields have had a fair bit to say about consumer electronics over a long period. But as Miller and Maxwell write in their book Greening the Media, many intellectual correctives to our love affair with technology, our technophilia, have come and gone without establishing much of a foothold against the breathtaking flood of gadgets. And in particular, the common strategy used by academics in our field is often to try to kind of critique, disenchant or rupture the technological sublime, I guess, basically kinds of consciousness raising around the consumption and obsolescence cycle of media devices. But as we know, this can only be scaled so far, really. It has kind of these limits in terms of its effectiveness, I think. So for scholars, there are still many useful ways into the question of consumer electronics obsolescence and reuse and repair and so forth that go beyond negative critique and disenchantment. And so the approach that we've taken in this project was really just an empirical one to try and kind of understand what people are actually doing with their TVs, when do they replace them, why do they replace them, and what values and habits drive this behaviour. Okay, so onto software and software obsolescence, which is kind of my focus for today. So there's two different types of software obsolescence on smart TVs that can cause problems. So the first is obsolescence of particular apps. So when apps stop getting supported, and that'll depend on the particular app and the development team behind it. But from talking to local broadcasters and other kind of content providers, it's an interesting question because broadcasters in particular have finite resources that they can put behind their apps, and they have to make decisions about which platforms and devices they're going to support and which they're going to abandon. They call it sunsetting. So, and often those decisions are based on where the market is, but there's obvious kinds of equity and access issues as well too. And then there's obsolescence of the operating system itself. So every TV now has an operating system which shapes, which controls the search and the home screen and payments and everything like that. But this is only supported for a limited amount of time, and that varies quite a bit between brands, and you can see some examples there. Those are maximum figures, as stated by manufacturers. In practice, they're often much less than that, and it varies a lot from model to model and so forth. But you can see there's a big difference between the average expected lifespan of the hardware, which is now about 7 years, and the average effective lifespan of the software, which is about half that. So our TVs start getting buggy and stop working because the software long before they would need to be disposed of for hardware reasons. Okay. All right, so what happens when a TV gets buggy, slows down? What do we do? There's a few different responses. Some people will carry on and just, live without a few different apps. Others, the other tactic is to buy like a connected TV device, like an Apple TV or Fire TV stick, and kind of patch the TV, and it gives it extra time. So you're buying a new operating system to just plug into the TV, but of course that's less convenient, it's a bit fiddly. Not everyone knows about them or how to use them. So one of the most popular options really is the most easy option for those who can afford it, is to buy a new TV. And there's certainly no end of encouragement to do that. But as we know, that's, it's wasteful, it's unnecessary and so forth. So we're very interested in how we can kind of, the workarounds and the software longevity that might change that third option into being a less attractive option. But just to give a sense, so this is a survey that the federal government did last year as part of their explorations of smart TV regulation that we're getting with the prominence review that's going on right now. But the top reasons why people replace their TVs, the top two are to upgrade or keep up with new technology. So obviously apps and app availability is a huge issue here, and TV broke or malfunctioned. Okay, so I'll just share a couple of bits of insight that came out of our survey and our interviews. So these are some quotes from the interviews that Alexa did with retailers from JB Hi-Fi and all the big stores, where we asked them, do people ask, do you have conversations about longevity, about the lifespan of TVs? And this first retailer said that doesn't come up very much at all, not really. The lifespan always gets asked about the panel, so the hardware. Okay. But as far as the operating system and the apps go, no one really asks that much how they're going to update. And that's pretty representative of what we found. It's not a topic of discussion. It's certainly not one that retailers would initiate. Some customers might ask, but again, it's about, will the screen conk out or will the sound conk out, not will the app stop working. And the second quote there is from a different retailer, a very interesting retailer who works in a regional store, knows her customers very well, has quite a degree of empathy with her customers. She told Alexa, when you're getting into smart TVs, I say, they're like mobile phones. Eventually they'll stop working and they will be obsolete. So she was, explaining the obsolescence as part of her kind of attempt to care for her customers. But, and this is true, a TV is like a mobile phone now, but, how often do we replace our mobile phones? It's even, it's kind of 2 or 3 year cycles. So anyway, neither of those responses are particularly good news, I think, but they're different. One's more honest than the other, I guess. Okay, so what did we find from our survey? So about 2/3 of Australian adults now have some kind of smart or connected TV at home. Some are patching dumb TVs using CTV devices. Some only have a smart TV. Others have a smart TV and a CTV device, which speaks to, I guess, our love of technology, but also the fact that smart TVs age very quickly and people need to patch them. So you can see 43% have both a smart TV and a connected TV device, like an Apple TV or a Fire Stick. And the average number of smart TVs was 1.6. And when we asked about the age of them, so almost half of the TVs in the households we spoke to were less than 2 years old. So that we were really surprised by that. High rate of device turnover. But of course, as you get older and older, so the ones in the columns to the right, they're going to get buggier and buggier. So that came through very clearly in the survey and in the retailer discussions as well. We had a bunch of open-ended questions in the survey, which were designed to hopefully just let people speak freely about particular aspects of their TV. We asked them what they liked about their TV, what they found frustrating, whether the TVs changed the way they watch content, that kind of thing. So these are the frustration questions. And so the biggest frustration was around usability, the remote and so forth. But the next biggest category of frustrations was around software. So people saying it's too slow, it crashes, or it's too old. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of that. So too slow, getting slow for no reason over time. That's a very, very normal experience with a smart TV now. It takes ages to load certain apps and scroll through them compared to my phone. Too old, getting old will need a replacement in a year or two. Outdated software that's never been updated by the manufacturer. Faults and glitches, turns off by itself randomly, having to reinstall apps when they won't open. So basically software-related issues. Okay, and we found there that there were kind of two constituencies in those responses, the people who were complaining about software. So a lot of people who had lower end TVs, cheaper TVs, had a lot of software issues, which makes sense because they have, less processing power and so forth. But then there's also people who had more tech confidence. We asked a question about tech confidence later, and so there's kind of also a contingent of people a bit more fussy too, and more likely to notice these issues. So it's a combination of those two. Okay, so repair. So we've been thinking and researching a bit about repair. And what is, I guess, most obvious to us is that the repair industry does not really exist as an industry in the same way that it used to. So this is Melbourne specific, but we've found that there's really only about 2 or 3 kind of full-time TV repair places that you can go to that have an office and a local phone number, and as opposed to some guy's mobile phone number, that are kind of like formal businesses that repair TVs or TVs and other electronics. There's still a lot of repair expertise out there, but a lot of repair people have gone into TV installations and kind of smart home kind of stuff, which is more where the market is now. So there's essentially been a kind of deformalisation, I think, of repair as an industry, very contrasting with what you've shown us, Adrian, and what we heard from Jack and Michelle and other speakers today. But this is the way we are in Australia, in a kind of high wage society. And the other factor there is price of TVs as well too. So price of TVs have fallen very steadily over the last decade. This is from the US, but I think the point is equally valid here. So this shows wages, cost of different goods and services in relation to wages, and so TVs are right at the bottom. If you can't see that, the bottom one is TVs. Below, toys, computer software, cell phone services, clothing, and so forth. So TV, basically TV manufacturing, the bottom's kind of fallen out of that market. The margins are very slim now, and that's why all these TV manufacturers are platformizing and trying to make money from services and advertising now too. So that's part of it, but it also means that it makes less and less sense to repair TVs because the repair costs and the labour costs and the component costs might be less attractive than just buying a new one from JB Hi-Fi. So all of that, there's not a huge amount that one can do about it, but I think it explains our disposability culture with TVs that were traditionally highly expensive, generational devices that you would keep for, 10 or even 20 years. So what can we do about it? I'm not sure. There's many, I think I've learnt much more from today than I have to share. But, someone as scholars of kind of culture and communication, I think part of this is to do with questions of value, cultural questions of value, meaning, discourse, and so forth. So what I would like to see is different ways in which TVs are marketed that kind of emphasise longevity and long-term value. So when you go and buy a TV, or when you're looking for TVs, same with mobile phones, we always have tech specs. So tech specs that refer to particular, normally physical characteristics of the TV, its resolution, screen size, refresh rate, what have you. What we've been thinking about is, what would other kinds of specs look like that point to some of the other kinds of the other aspects of TVs that we need to be thinking about. So a lot of the project is actually thinking about the kinds of questions around cultural distribution and access, which is in the middle column. So we would love to see when people go into JB Hi-Fi, do you get a sense of the interoperability of the TV, the availability of different apps on the TV, the way in which the home screen is curated and how intentional or coercive that might be to point to advertiser services and so forth, the openness of the TV's app store and marketplace. All of those things we think are really, really important. But equally, there are sustainability issues that we need to be thinking about here too, and that could form part of TV marketing and choice, decision making by consumers, longevity, repairability, things that we've spoken about today already. So of course that's not straightforward, but one thing that we've been trying to do is to use some of this research. I guess we've done a series of columns with choice, which has been fabulous, and to talk about longevity issues in TV hardware and software. And we've also been working with the Choice TV testing team, who are fabulous group of people and who are really, really knowledgeable about TV history, hardware and software, to work with them to develop a new kind of ranking framework for their smart TV scoring too. So that's been fascinating. And so hopefully that will kind of come online in the next few months. So I'll leave it there. But again, this is the kind of consumer end of things, as we heard from as we heard from Nathan this morning. This doesn't get us all the way back to the coal mine and to the questions of production, but small things that we can think about, I think. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you.